We are just 1 week away from the premiere of Hawkeye on Disney+, and in this video, we got to talk about what books might get hot. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Haas. And in this video, we got to talk about some Hawkeye books. That's right, we are just 1 week away from the premiere of Hawkeye on Disney+. And I don't know about you guys, but it feels like the waters have been pretty cool for this show overall. So in this video, I kind of wanted to take a look at the market and also kind of, see if we can spot any books that might be worth swooping up just before we get the show. But before I get into the video for today, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do one of those things, I would appreciate it. But let's get into this video here today. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually really looking forward to the Hawkeye show. We've been getting a lot of Disney Marvel properties that are, really, really big power levels. And I feel like Hawkeye is going to be very successful at what it's trying to do. It's not going to be too epic or too grand or too cosmic. And I feel like, that's a good thing. I think that we could use just a little nice, street level character story or show on Disney+. So I'm actually really looking forward to it. But maybe because, we're not building a grand plot, it feels like, some of the spec books and some of the books related to the show haven't really been, blowing up in the market as much as, we saw with, say, Eternals or Loki earlier this year, or even like the Spider-Man books and things like that. So it's really interesting to look at these books, but let me know your guys' thoughts down below. But with that all out of the way, we still got to talk about some books that are getting hot. And of course, we got to start by talking about Tales of Suspense number 57. This, of course, is the first appearance of Hawkeye. And, I think that this is actually a pretty underrated Silver Age key, in my opinion. And now I know there's a lot of people out there, especially like MCU fans, who kind of meme on Hawkeye. Like, I feel like he is definitely the least popular Avenger. And I think that that's, fair to say that he is that, but I still think that he's a great character. And I feel like Jeremy Renner has done a pretty good job with him overall. I'm excited to see what he can do in his own series with this character. So I'm looking forward to the show. But what's interesting about this book is like, when you look at some of the, 30-day moving averages, we just go here. If we see ones that have a big enough sample size, I mean, this book, like let's say here at the 4.5 grade, 1 year average, 1,025, 30-day moving, 1,100. We look here, 4.0, 1 year average, 629, 30-day moving, 750. Not too big of a jump overall, considering what we've gotten with the comic book market in this, last year or so. So there's a couple things going on. Obviously, there's been a little bit of a dip as far as the market is concerned, but also it feels like, maybe we're on the other end of the Disney Plus hype. As far as these shows are concerned, because, when we look at some of the books related to Spider-Man, and we know that the trailer just came out, all those books are going still pretty crazy. But, when we look at the Silver Age key right here, Tales of Suspense 57, there's still actually a lot of inventory online right now for this book. Like, just, this is me, pulling up the eBay, scrolling through. I mean, look, you have a lot of options right here for a book like this, which was not the case for, say, if you wanted to get the first appearance of Loki the week before the Loki show. So maybe it's because everyone feels like, this is going to be the last hurrah for Hawkeye right here once we get, this Hawkeye show. We're going to see Clint Barton ride off into the sunset. But I still think that this is a great book and probably an okay time to buy it. I would never actually say that it would be a good time to buy a book before the character show is starting out. But when I do look at the numbers and I look at some of the fair market values and like the 30-day moving average compared to what it has been throughout the course of the year, this is actually still an okay time to find this book. Maybe it's because Hawkeye is not as popular as some of the other characters that have had shows, but still a great book, in my opinion. All right, let's go on to the next book that I think is interesting for the Hawkeye show. And this one, of course, is one that I think has not been talked about enough. And this one is Avengers number 19, first appearance of the Swordsman. This book also happens to be the origin of Hawkeye. And one thing that's really interesting to me about the Swordsman is that, we actually have a confirmed casting. I believe the actor's name is Tony Dalton. He will be playing the Swordsman in the Hawkeye show. Now, we haven't necessarily seen images of him yet, so we don't know exactly how big a part the Swordsman will be playing, but I feel like this is a very, very exciting opportunity and an exciting book because the Swordsman is a character that has a long history within Marvel comic books. This book right here is still a great Silver Age book, a very early Avengers. And I feel like, like we've seen some of the other characters who have blossomed once they came to the MCU, say Mantis or, all the Guardians of the Galaxy, etc. It's very possible that the Swordsman might play a role in the future. And I'm definitely going to talk about a book later on in this video relating it back to the Swordsman, because I'm not so sure that we're only going to get, a one-off appearance of the Swordsman character here in the Hawkeye show. I think that this might actually be a character that, the MCU has in their back pocket and might use from time to time. And when I go onto eBay looking at this book, overall, I still think that there are pretty good deals. I mean, here's one for $75. Not too bad overall. It's not a bad copy. It's probably like a 4.0. And, that's not too bad of a price for a nice little Silver Age key. So there is still a lot of inventory out there for this book. And I think the Swordsman has some potential to be a character that is utilized throughout Marvel comic books. Here at the 9.4 grade, we can see that there is a 30-day moving average that has gone up a lot, $1,800 compared to $1,200 for the 1 year. But then down here at the low grade, when we look at the 4.5s, we see 113 compared to 142, 160 compared to 108. So it's not like it's been absolutely flying off the shelves, but this one still, to me, feels like a nice little key to pick up if you are a fan of this character. All right, let's go on now to the next book here. And the next book we got to talk about, of course, is Daredevil #9 from 1999. And this, of course, is the first appearance of Echo. Now, this is a book that I feel like has been lighting up the lamps, so to speak, with regards to Hawkeye. I think everyone is super excited about Echo coming to the MCU. I don't know what it is, but this character seems to be beloved by comic book collectors. And it feels like everyone is, salivating over getting their hands on this book. We know that Echo is going to make an appearance in Hawkeye, and then later on she will be getting her own MCU Disney Plus show, which is actually pretty crazy when you think about it. I mean, you think about all the characters that have been introduced right now in the MCU, all the characters that are on the slate that could potentially have shows, and they decided to not only bring this character, to the MCU in Hawkeye here, but they're actually going to give her own show. So I think that they probably have a lot of faith in this character overall. They're very, very excited about her. And this is definitely a book that has gotten super hot recently. I mean, you can see this one is definitely one that, at the 9.8, 1 year moving average 647. Now it's up to 746. 9.6, same thing, 325 to 327. So actually been kind of holding its value. But when you go onto eBay looking at this thing, you can see this one is definitely being sold quite a bit here. We have a lot of sales on November 14th, November 13th, etc. A lot of stuff coming off the heels of Disney Plus Day. A lot of sales for this particular book, whereas some of the other ones like Avengers #19, we didn't see too many sales about that, and that's because the Swordsman wasn't a part of the news cycle, whereas Echo was. So this is definitely a book that has been really, really hot, and probably I would not pick up right now because I do think that we're hitting a peak with this thing. All right, the next book we got to talk about is, of course, Young Avengers #1. And why am I talking about it for Hawkeye? Well, I'm talking about it because this is the first appearance of Kate Bishop Hawkeye. Now, she doesn't become Hawkeye yet, but for all intents and purposes, this is the one that the market seems to gravitate to, and for good reason. It definitely feels like we're going to get another piece to the puzzle of the Young Avengers in this show right here. When we get Hawkeye, it feels like we've been laying the foundation in all of the various shows throughout the MCU with regards to bringing the Young Avengers into the fold. And this feels like it's going to be, the most recent addition, which of course we know is going to be Haley Steinfeld playing Kate Bishop Hawkeye. And with regards to this book, as far as some of the values are concerned, I mean, definitely still, going strong, slowly increasing over the, these last 30 days or so. But when you look at some of the raw potential and you look at some of the raw grades, I mean, it's not like there's been too many sales. This is sold for Young Avengers #1. But if I take off the sold items here and I go through the eBay, you see still a lot of opportunities for this book being posted online, especially on those live auction bids. So I feel like, if you're someone out there who is still a big fan of the Young Avengers, this might still be an okay time to, fish for a book like this. If you can get a live auction bid and score a copy, you might be able to get a really good deal for yourself. And it definitely feels like this is a book that has legs in the future, especially, as we get Kate Bishop here in this current show. We know that, we're going to have all the foundation for all the characters on the table now. All right, well, speaking of Kate Bishop, another book that kind of relates to her and this Hawkeye show is this one, of course, which is Hawkeye #1, written by Kelly Thompson. And this, of course, is the first solo ongoing Hawkeye Kate Bishop series. That was kind of a mouthful. But generally speaking, I feel like this is a great book to own if you are a fan of the Kate Bishop character. You know, we always talk about in my Key Comic Spotlight videos or even other spec book videos and things like that, I'm a big fan of first solo series, first solo ongoing series, because, you know, if you're someone out there who is a fan of that character and you really like them, sometimes their first appearance, you know, doesn't have them on the cover, or sometimes their first appearance doesn't have their name in the title. And that is certainly true of Kate Bishop Hawkeye. So, you know, when we're talking about collector items for a character that you may really love, this kind of feels like a really good go-to book for the Kate Bishop character if she's your jam. A lot of people have been looking at this book. We all know that Haley Steinfeld is coming. But again, you know, if you look at some of the values, you look at some of the stuff, you know, 30-day moving average compared to the 1 year, 9.8, 194, a year ago used to be 212. So this is definitely one that has had a bit of a correction. And I think there is still an opportunity to get this one, especially if Haley Steinfeld knocks the performance out of the park. And, you know, generally speaking, she has done very well with a lot of the roles she's played throughout her, you know, acting career. All right, the next book we got to talk about is a very big one. This one is Inhumans #5, first appearance of Yelena Belova, Black Widow. Now, we all know about Yelena Belova. She, of course, was played by Florence Pugh in the Black Widow film. And kind of like what I was saying with, you know, Haley Steinfeld winning over the MCU fans, I feel like Florence Pugh really won over a lot of people with her performance in the Black Widow film. And this book definitely got hot at that time, especially earlier in the year, you know, during the state of the market. Well, we all, you know that at the end of that film, we got the tease that, you know, that Yelena Belova was maybe going to be pursuing Hawkeye. So it's fair to assume that we're going to see her in this Hawkeye show. And I feel like, you know, when we see her in the show, like people do, you know, out of sight, out of mind, or I guess in sight, in mind, you know, when we see her again, this book I think is going to get really, really hot, especially if she ends up having like a pretty significant role in the show overall. So I think that this is a great book, and one that has actually had like a bit of a dip overall because we're on the other end of Black Widow, but it feels like Yelena Belova is going to have a long career in the MCU. So if you're someone who's a fan of that character, this might be a good time to kind of, you know, low-key swoop up this book before we actually get her back in the show where she makes some kind of appearance. All right, in the last couple of books I want to talk about, kind of dive a little more into sort of the speculative aspect of what we might see in the Hawkeye show. And this one that I want to talk about, of course, first up is Amazing Spider-Man #50, first appearance of Kingpin. Now, there has been a lot of rumors that the Vincent D'Onofrio, who of course played Kingpin in the Daredevil show, is going to make a surprise cameo here in the Hawkeye Disney Plus show. There's been a lot of speculation about that. I won't go into all of it, but generally speaking, people are thinking that he might show up in the show. And if he does, this book, I can't wait to see what the market does with this. I mean, I feel like the FOMO will be real with this one for sure. So right now, I think, you know, if you're someone who has always been a fan of this book and you've always wanted to pick it up, low key, if you can find a good deal, this might be the week to pull the trigger on something like this, because I think that if we do get him in the show, this is definitely going to be a book that, you know, absolutely blows up in the market. Probably will be the biggest book to blow up in the Hawkeye show if we get Vincent D'Onofrio. So I definitely like this book overall. I like it outside of speculative value. I think this is a great book to invest in. I think this is a great book that, you know, is a classic cover, is iconic. It will always be, you know, desired in the market. So anytime you can get your hands on this, I think it's always a good buy. The other speculative book I wanted to talk about, of course, is Marvel Team Up #95, first appearance of Mockingbird. Now, it doesn't feel like, you know, there's been any sort of foundation laid for us to get Mockingbird. It doesn't feel like, you know, we're going to get this character, but of course, Mockingbird is associated with Hawkeye so closely that if they did want to bring this character in, ever in the MCU, this would sort of be the time to do it. So, you know, again, another book that I still think is a great book outside of MCU Spec, one to definitely have in the collection, but, you know, could be something that is interesting to pick up before we get the show. And then, of course, the last book I got to talk about is Incredible Hulk 449. This wouldn't be a video if I wasn't going to talk about this one, but this, of course, is the first appearance of the Thunderbolts. I'm a big believer that we're still going to get the Thunderbolts in the MCU, and I feel like in Hawkeye. No doubt, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is showing up at some point in Hawkeye, and she's going to do her latest recruitment. And, remember when I talked about, the swordsman? I actually think that she goes up to, the swordsman and asks him to join her team. So I actually think, we're going to get another tease for the Thunderbolts in the Hawkeye show. My guess is that she's going to be talking to the swordsman. I mean, that's my speculation. I suppose it's possible that she talks to Echo. I suppose it's possible that, she recruits, I don't know, Ronin maybe, or like another version of Hawkeye. I don't know, but I do actually think that she will recruit the swordsman, and I do believe that she will show up in the show, but I could be wrong. Anyways, that's all for this video. Let me know what you guys think. What books are you targeting? Are you guys excited for the Hawkeye show? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next video.